Delta Gamma's philanthropy is service for sight, and a part of that is we make tactile books, puffy paint pages, and Braille cards for the visually impaired or blind in our community. Today we're going to cover just how exactly to make the proper Braille card and puffy paint page, what to do and what not to do. So let's get started. So some good materials for doing puffy paint pages would be actual puffy paint, which you can get from Michael's, any craft store, Target, Walmart, and they normally come in like pretty big packs. Some things that you should not use is like glitter glue or just really like anything that doesn't stand up and have like a thickness, because when it comes to like glitter glue and things like that, it becomes like crusty and they can't actually color within the lines because there's no definitive line of where the picture ends and begins. The first step to doing a puffy paint page is to go online and look up something like fun coloring pages or easing coloring pages. So what I'm going to do is print out a picture of, let's say, a flower or a cupcake. So you're going to print that off and you're going to make sure that you have your little bottle of puffy paint. And I would sit down in a place where people aren't going to come and like accidentally like mess up your pages or something, kind of like go in a place where you can lay them all out for them to dry. And your next step would be to start using the puffy paint. So I am just going to start by testing my puffy paint. So don't like just automatically start using your puffy paint, because sometimes a big old like glob of paint will squirt out and it messes up your page. So get a test page and you're just gonna kind of practice doing a couple dots just to make sure that your puffy paint works. And if it doesn't, that way you can switch it out for another one. A good puffy paint page is a coloring page that's printed out, that's relatively simple. It doesn't have a ton of details. It's going to be something, if you Google puffy paint pages or coloring pages online, you'll print it out. And it's going to be really nice and simple. And the biggest thing that you're going to want is you're going to want an even like squeeze of puffy paint across your coloring page, because the whole purpose is people who are visually impaired and blind so they can color inside the lines. So you have to make it to where if you were to close your eyes and put your finger over it, that you could feel what the shape was. Maybe you shouldn't use your mandala stress relief coloring page, and I would look up something like flowers or dogs or kitties or something like that, because that's going to be a lot simpler, because the reality is we don't want to waste your time in making it so complicated that it's not the best quality possible. So you don't need like Princess Jasmine on like an Arabian carpet with her tiger. Like you can have like a cupcake. A bad puffy paint page is one where the details aren't filled in completely. So let's say like if I have a dog, if the dog does not have eyes, that's really not what we're looking for. We want it to be a complete idea. And I would need to be able to close my eyes and trace my finger across it and understand what the picture would be. So in order for that to happen, you need nice like crisp paper and you need puffy paint, and you must allow it like at least an hour or two to dry before you move it. That way it doesn't like stick to the next page. So just make sure you're thoughtful with the amount of time you're putting into them. A good size for your puffy paint lines for your coloring pages would be just to make it about the width as like the tip of the puffy paint tip. So you're going to want to do one steady stream. So try not to stop a lot in between, because that can make the line kind of inconsistent. So you're going to start like, let's say I'm going to start from the middle. You're going to hold down at medium pressure and then just move it across the line. If you see that it gets uneven, that's all right, but let it finish your line before you go back and try to fix it. If you have a problem where your puffy paint page, like while you're doing it, kind of bursts with your puffy paint coming out, have a little like piece of paper that you can like fold up and kind of like scrape the excess off. It's no big deal. It literally happens to everybody. Just make sure that it doesn't dry. So as long as you can like get it off, and that way it doesn't distract, because let's say you're doing like a puppy and then you get a glob of paint pops off and then suddenly the puppy is like turned into a mermaid. Like they're going to be really confused. Like a puppy mermaid may not be what they're looking for. As fun as it might be to draw in Braille, it can actually really be confusing to someone who's visually impaired or blind, because that's their way of communicating and understanding language. And drawing pictures and expressing language are two different things. And so if you want to draw like a Christmas tree in Braille at the bottom, that's actually going to be really like throw them off. And so the best thing is if you just write the message, and then if you want to draw a fun picture, just do a puffy paint page and print off something to like staple it on or to go along with it. Because we want to keep them as crisp and simple as possible. That way it's easier for the people at the Dallas School for the Blind to sort through them and to keep everything streamlined. Once you have finished the outline of the design for your coloring page, make sure that you look back at it and you think, if I was visually impaired, is this something that I could enjoy or use? Because the whole purpose is to brighten someone's day or to have a fun activity. So when we have a puffy paint page, look at it and make sure, like, if I close my eyes and I trace this, granted, don't do it while it's wet because that'll not work out very well for you. But you have to make sure that the lines or your puffy paint line is thick enough and tall enough that when it dries, like let's say a little kid is like coloring in between it, that it's going to be high enough that they'll understand that that's where the line stops. Okay, so the best way to have a good Braille card is, imagine if I am sending a card to my best friend. I'm going to write her something that's uplifting and encouraging, and I would write it in normal script handwriting, right? You want to do the same thing for Braille cards. If you're just going to write it in Braille and translate the message into script below. So the best way to do that would be to have either a printout of the Braille alphabet next to you, or to pull it up on your phone and think, like, what's something that would encourage me? A really good Braille card would have a nice message, and it would be on a relatively small sheet of paper, and below it, it would tell me what the message is. Because let's say when we're sorting through the Braille cards, if it just has the dots on it, then we have to spend the time to go back through and translate the Braille card, and that just takes more time on everybody's part. So that way we can organize and send the messages at the right time. So I don't want to send a happy St. Patrick's Day during a Christmas time, so we want to keep them really nice and organized. You know how sometimes we can do a word and then start another line and do a word and another line, and it makes sense to us because we're sighted? To them, it's confusing if you have a word and then like a bunch of excess space and then another word. So you want to make sure that you, when you're doing your Braille, that you don't add really large spaces and you only go to the next line whenever you don't have room for your next word. Your Braille dots, you want it to be relatively small, so you don't want it to be like the size of your like tip of your pinky. You want it to be minute. If you've ever been in a building where you look at the sign and it has Braille below the sign, you want to try to adhere as closely to the size of Braille that's on like public signs as you can, because that's what they're used to reading. So you just have to remember that it's not for someone who's sighted. So even if it doesn't make sense to you, it's not for us. The purpose is to teach us. So just make sure your Braille dots are as small as you can possibly make them. If you have a mistake while you're making your Braille and something happens where like two dots get connected and they're not supposed to be connected, just use your little spare piece of paper and slide it off. It will come off really easily.
So what you're going to need for Braille cards is, first of all, you're going to need your Braille alphabet. Then you're going to need a pen, something to write with so that Aaron knows what you're trying to say. You're also going to need some puffy paint, just a straight edge of some sort, like a sheet of paper, whatever, to make your lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with making 3 lines across so that we can effectively get these rows of dots right here. 1, 2, 3, and we're going to try to get lines across so that we can effectively get the same spacing so that we can use it with the tip of our finger right here. So let's get started. We're going to write "Have a great day." So first you're going to start with your 3 lines. 1, 2, 3, and we're going to try to match them up with this right here. So we're going to try to get these dots on each line. See how these are spaced out together like that? Every single dot. This is what a block is. These are all spaced out in the same space. And so we're going to use this space in between each letter. So here's what I'm going to do. It's going to be a block. So this is one letter right here. And basically you're going to keep the same distance between these two in between each block. So you're going to kind of use like a grid system, and you're just going to keep going down all the way until you run out of space. So see how I have like a bunch of dots and there's not really anything going on here right now? You're going to take, each two is going to be its own little block, so these are all their own letters. So I'm going to keep filling in same amount of distance, because you're going to want to go to like the farthest end of the line. It's okay if you lose track, like it doesn't have to be like exactly all the blocks or anything. But see how I'm using like the same consistent distance in between each dot? That's what you're going to want to do for every single word, letter, and space. So there we go. Say this is going to be like our first line. We're going to end it here. That's going to be the end of our sheet of paper. These are all blocks. So these would all be their own individual letters. So these would be the letters for have. H-A-V-E. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up how you do have. So I'm going to look up H. That's this right here. And what I usually do is I make X's for where I'm going to put my dots so that I know before what I'm going to write and where the letters are so that I don't mess up as I'm doing my puffy paint. So I'm just going to make small X's right here so that I know what I'm going to want to do. So that is the letter H. So now we're going to move on to the next block right here, and that's going to be the letter A. So I'm going to consult my alphabet. Here's the letter A. Next we're going to go to V. So that would be V and E. And so these X's just personally help me. It may not be a method that you like to use since it's so small and it can get confusing, but it's just something that really helps me get it all organized before I actually start to use the paint. Now we've written the letter have, but you see that I still have dots right here. So basically each of these are going to be a block. I'm going to have another block here, but it's going to be a space. So you're going to want to use each block all the way down. So that way you have the same consistent space so that they know what you're trying to tell them. So I'm going to use one block where technically a like letter would be as a space in between the next word. So then I'm going to say A, and I know what A is. So here's my next one, and it's going to be an A. And then I'm going to use this again as a space. Right here, that's going to be have, space, A, space. And then you're going to go to the next two. So this one's going to be great. So that'd be great. And then we have another space. And then I have just enough room for day. You're going to put a D there. And A. And then that's going to be a Y. So now we're going to use puffy paint. What you're going to do is you're going to want to get it on right on that, like a dot about that size. See, it's like really, really tiny. And so you're going to want to go on every single X I've put. And since I've already marked them out, it's not confusing and I'm not consulting. And so I can just go straight into what I want, just to mark it where the X's are. So see how it has some of that volume right there? You can like see it popping up. That's exactly what you want. You want this kind of height. You don't want it to be flat because then they can't really feel it, and there's just really no point to Braille if like they can't actually feel it. So like it could be like this big. It doesn't have to be an entire sheet of paper. It doesn't even have to be quarters. You could just have it this big. This is just how I like to use it with the X's and the grid system and using each block as a space in for a letter. That way it'll just help you get organized and keep a consistent way of doing Braille cards. Just make sure you write "have a great day" on it and make sure to keep them nice and neat. If you mess up, wipe away the paint before it dries. That's Braille cards. Thanks for watching. Let's help some kids read and brighten their day.